The dome had no wind. Its lights were soft and slow, like a heartbeat that had grown steady with age. In that room the galaxy kept its records. Old species met here. New threats were measured here. The walls held maps and memories as if they were things to study, not things to fear. On a thin bench, a junior analyst named Vila watched the console blink. She had read signals for 10 cycles, and she had seen calls that screamed war and songs that meant peace. Tonight she expected routine. Tonight she did not expect the sound that slipped in like a small, strange bird. The packet arrived as a single pulse. It was not loud. It did not carry the heavy markers of a military broadcast. It came like a small bell, clear and clean. Machines opened it and showed what they could. Pictures first: trees in motion, a river like ribbon, buildings with many lights like a field of tiny stars. A child ran across a field with nothing on his feet. A metal bird folded its wings and settled on a roof. A hand reached down to help another hand climb. The images were simple. They were not about power. Vila blinked. She sent the file to the senior archive. The older officers did not hurry. They had seen worlds shout and then fall. This file did not shout. It whispered. The last piece played slowly. A human voice spoke in a language the dome could not match exactly. The words were simple. The tone was tired, but warm. "We make mistakes," the voice said. "We break things. We fix things, too. We keep trying." Silence moved through the dome like fog. A council member coughed once and then did not speak. The machines reviewed and gave no threat level. The threat charts remained quiet. Yet more than one old eye in the room tightened. They had rules for danger. They had lists for species that were cruel or fast or clever. They did not have a list for a species that sang while fixing its broken tools. They did not have a rule for stubborn hope. Outside the dome, the galaxy hummed on. A small listening post turned its instruments toward a blue planet in a crowded arm of stars. It had a name in old files: Earth. The name had little color to it on the maps. It had weather records and failed treaties and wars inside its own maps. No empire on Earth. No mighty fleet. Just noise and life. A captain of a scout vessel watched the same images another way, on his ship's dim screen. He scratched at a scar on his hand and thought the packet was a trick of space. He had been trained to expect propaganda, to expect lies that dressed themselves as music. He ordered a closer look. The crew leaned over. Their faces were more human than many in the dome would ever admit. The scout sent back a small report. "Not a standard threat," the captain wrote. "Emotional content. Unknown adaptation potential." Vila read the line and underlined the phrase in the file. Unknown adaptation potential. The word sat in her mouth like a seed. The council did not rush. They called a secret session less than one rotation later. Maps were unrolled. Histories were pulled from cold storage. A dozen old arguments came back to life. Some said they should ignore Earth. It was small. Some said they should watch. It was curious. A few voices said they should act, quietly, to learn more. While the council argued, the scout drifted closer. Its camera found a city where light had broken into many tiny squares. It found a market where people traded pieces of old metal for baked bread. It saw a woman mending a child's coat by the light of a lamp. It did not find war drums, it found both sorrow and song. One night on the Scout, a technician looped a file and watched an old broadcast over and over. In the picture a child drew a circle with many lines like a sun. Inside the sun the child put many little hands. No words. The drawing looked accidental and honest. The technician smiled without knowing why and left the drawing on the console. Back in the dome, the council read the report and argued about numbers and policy. A general wanted to test Earth's defenses with a small probe. A historian warned of the cost when a species surprises you. The word potential kept circling like a knife. Potential was not a number you could box. It grew when carved at the wrong place. Vila went home under a sky that had no dome and felt a shape of fear she could not name. She had no children. She watched the stars and thought of that voice that said, "We keep trying." It sounded like a promise. It also sounded like a warning, try enough and you change. The council made a small move. Not a war. Not a message of threat. A scout would slip closer, to listen and to see. It would not touch. The captain accepted. He made one quiet note in his log, small, soft content. But human tone is persistent. Recommend continued monitoring. The first step was simple and careful. The second was not yet taken. But the child's son with hands drawing had moved from a small screen to a hand in the dome. The clerk who carried it folded it and placed it in his coat as if it were a map. He did not know who drew it. He only knew it felt like a start. That night, the scout found a faint signal hidden between songs. It was quick and unlike any human music they had heard. It used a rhythm the scout had heard once in ancient military beacons, but here it carried no weapons. It carried a count. 1, 2, 3, then a pause. Then a tone that made the ship's instruments hum with a pattern the captain could not name. The captain wrote one line and then stopped. The word he wrote was small and shaky, unpredictable. The dome lights dimmed. Outside the map of stars held its breath. The quiet signal was only the first sound. What it had started was a thin crack in old certainty. The galaxy noticed. The rest would watch to see how wide the crack might grow. The scout ship moved slow and low over the planet. It kept its lights dim. The crew watched Earth below with careful eyes. They expected crooked streets, loud wars, broken states. They expected fear. They did not expect a song. The song came from a ruined district. It was small and thin, like a thread pulled from an old cloth. People walked along cracked roads carrying buckets and blankets. A group of strangers gathered near a collapsed bridge. They did not fight. They sang together as they worked. Their voices were rough and strong. They used their song to lift heavy beams and to time their steps. It was not music for comfort. It was music for work. The scout captain, Kerno, leaned forward. He had seen many things in his travels. He had watched machines fall silent and cities burn. He had read reports about vicious tribes that rose and ate their neighbors. He had never watched a bridge rebuilt with a chorus. The scout filmed the scene and sent a short clip to the council. The clip opened like a seed. It showed a woman with dirt under her nails handing a plate of soup to a soldier who had just fired a weapon. The soldier ate and then kept working on a broken radio. A child kicked an empty can and laughed. It was not a picture of victory. It was a picture of people who would not let their life end. In the high rooms of the council, the clip made the old maps shift. Some members saw proof to ignore Earth. Small and messy, they said. Others felt the old word again, potential. The council decided quietly at first to test a little pressure. Not war. Not an invasion. A single, precise strike to a supply bridge that fed a local militia. The strike was clean. A guided dart from a distant platform cut the bridge in the middle of the night. The militia lost a supply line. The commanders watching expected panic. They expected anger that would burn the towns into silence. That is what their models said. At dawn the town was not silent. Lanterns burned. People gathered on the riverbanks. They carried ropes and planks. The bridge was not the same as before. It was different and stronger. They used the broken parts of the old bridge to make supports. Women and men worked together. Soldiers stood at the edge and handed up tools. The militia mended its nets and then helped push the new bridge into place. Kerno watched the repair and felt cold. His training had not taught him how to read this. He sent another report. The message top read, resilience, high. Reaction, cooperative. He did not know which word to use for the look on his crew's faces when they watched a child hand bread to an enemy soldier. Words on the council table grew sharper. A general wanted to do more tests. Push them, he said. See how they crack. A historian argued against tests that change a species. We have records, she said. Small pressure becomes a lesson. Lessons change nature. Meanwhile, on the ground in a ruined city, a teacher named Mara listened to the news on an old radio. She learned of a strange blast on the bridge. Her hands were used to making people move and work. She gathered students in a square and told them to help. Build, she said. Fix. Learn how to make new lines. They did not ask why. They only asked how. Mara spoke on a small open frequency that night. Her voice was quiet and steady. We are afraid, she said. But fear shows us what to do. We help. We fix. We remember who helped and who hurt. Her words were not for a crowd. They were a note tied to a bottle and sent out in the dark. Somewhere far above, Kerno's crew heard the message. The simple words lodged in their instruments like pebbles. They did not match any rule in the books. The captain added a short line to his file, emotional resilience present. Social networks strong. That line moved like a light behind the council faces. The more the aliens pushed, the more the humans learned. The council's models were built on static enemies, not on people who train while they grieve. Each small test taught the humans something. Each test changed their tools. Engineers on Earth began to learn fast. They washed alien signals and old salvage for parts. A team of tinkerers used the metal from crashed drones to make better housings for radio sets. Scouts learned to use old weather patterns to hide movement. Soldiers learned to use songs to signal quiet attacks, and artists used the same songs to teach children where safe paths lay. One night, a comm burst through the scouts' long-range receiver. It was short and strange. A human voice sang a cadence that matched an old alien timing code. The rhythm fit patterns used in ancient beacons. Kerno paused the playback until the voice looped again. This time the words were not song. They were a count. 1, 2, 3. Then a tone that matched a sequence the scout had only seen in military drills. Kerno sent a line to the council that read, possible learning of alien code. Intent, unknown. The council took the line and frowned. How did humans learn an alien timing so fast? The historian said, they listen. They copy. They patch. The general said, if they learn our code, they can break our plans. The word code made a thin sound in the room, like ice over water. On Earth, Mara taught children to keep time with the drum as they rebuilt a radio tower. She did not know the sound had matched an alien cadence. She did not know her drum lessons would be read by machines in a far room as practice. Kurno watched an image of the town's hands passing tools. He watched the way they shared parts and plans. He felt uneasy. The captain changed the tone of his reports. He used a new phrase, adaptive culture. The strike had not broken them. It had taught them. The council realized that each small act of pressure could make the species learn faster. The general's voice grew low. "We must choose," he said. "Do we press and risk making them dangerous? Or do we watch and risk letting them grow unchecked?" No one answered that night. The scout picked up another human broadcast. It contained a short lesson in a code similar to their own. The sound repeated 3 times. The captain rewound the file and listened. The message ended with a soft human laugh, not mean, not cruel, but full of stubborn life. Kurno wrote one word in his log and closed it with a hand that did not shake, but came close, problematic. Above Earth, the stars seemed normal. Below them, people hummed as they worked. Neither side was ready for what came next. The test had been small. The change it made might be small too. Or it might grow. The scout set its cameras to quiet watch and waited for the next small lesson. The council read the log and waited for their next meeting. Both waited for the moment when small things become hard to hold. The signal that matched an old alien timing code was small. It arrived like wind through a cracked window, quiet, but it moved everything in the room that could move. On the scout ship, the playback looped until the crew grew hungry of its own breath. The rhythm fit a pattern the captain had only seen in ancient drills and encrypted beacons. Yet the voice that used it was human, soft, and clear. Kurno tapped the console. "They are copying," he said. His crew watched the screen where a girl beat a drum and children clapped in time. In the screen the drum was for work, to help lift, to measure steps. But in Kurno's memory the same pattern signaled orders on battlefields long dead. Back in the council dome, analysts argued late into one stale night. "They are learning our code too fast," an officer said. "They listen to any sound and make it theirs." The analysts spoke in neat lists: mimicry, adaptation, speed. The lists were made to calm fear. They did not calm the hand of the admiral who read them. On Earth, the drum lessons had a simple aim. Mara taught time and care. Her students learned to fix radios, to solder wires, to listen for signals in the noise. She told them stories of old engineers who had made machines sing from scraps. She did not know that her lessons would read as training. To her, the drum made the work easier. For others, it looked like practice for something else. Humans were good at that, turning one thing into another. A bread oven became a lab. A market became a map of supply lines. Soldiers used songs to time movements and then turned the same songs into warnings for townsfolk. A fisher's net became a sensor for movement in shallow water. The scouts aboard Kurno's ship saw these shifts and wrote them down in cold words: cross-domain adaptation, multi-use artifacts, cultural engineering. Adaptation was not only in tools. It lived in habits. A band of engineers took alien fragments and tried to read their logic. They did not have alien math. They had guts and 1,000 small tries. They learned to read the edges of alien circuits, to copy rhythms in their own way. The first crude patch they made did not fly well. It sputtered. The second held longer. The 10th carried a small drone above a ruined field. On a small moon base, an alien patrol set a trap for a band of human raiders. The patrol used lights and sound to make a path that would trap them in an open plain. The raiders walked into the net and then used a trick no scout had counted on. They released a line of small mirrors and polished scraps into a shallow pool at dawn. When the sun rose, the reflected light flooded the patrol's sensors. The trap failed because the sensors saw too much at once. Humans had used brightness as a shield. The patrol commander could not compute how to react. His orders told him to fire, to pursue, to mark the raiders as savage and to erase them. He hesitated because the mirrors had changed the data his machines produced. For a moment his crew was left with a choice not written in their orders: shoot into a blinding light or wait. They waited. That pause let the raiders scatter into crannies the sensors could not see. The captain of the scout wrote, "Environmental manipulation high." He added, beneath it, a single word: improvise. Improvise frightened the council because it broke models. Models need limits. Improvise adds new corners to a shape you thought plain. The more the humans learned, the more corners they made. They stitched alien patterns into songs and into tools. They used broken engines as frames for new ideas. They timed movements with rhythms borrowed from alien beacons and then used those rhythms to hide whole convoys in plain sight. Then something unexpected happened. An alien field agent named Rasu watched footage of a town where humans tied lanterns to poles and to wires, making a web of light above a square. The lanterns were a sign of mourning. They were also a network of simple power lines. People connected batteries and old panels to keep radios alive. Rasu had been trained to read grief as a weakness. What he saw instead was a map of who cared for whom. He saw the teacher Mara's notes, the engineer's hurried diagrams, the way a mother gave her last battery to a stranger. Rasu felt the feeling that made many spies pause: doubt. He had read reports that called humans brutal or noisy. He had read maps that painted them as a single kind of danger. The footage did not match those reports. It matched another file in his mind, one that showed his own kind closing ranks and burning villages that refused order. He remembered names the council had erased with cold words. He remembered faces that had begged for mercy and had not found it. Back on Earth, human engineers had taken an alien sensor and made a mock-up of it from market scraps. They set it in a toy and used a child's whistle to prime it. When the whistle played a rhythm copied from alien code, the toy blinked and sent false echoes. It was a laughable machine to a trained eye. For a patrol, it sent enough false echoes to think a whole convoy passed through a valley. For a human child, it was a game that taught timing and noise. For the patrol, it was a lesson in how small things could hide a large move. The council met and saw reports that painted a new picture: humans could copy, change, and mix. They could take a code and turn it into a song. They could use a drum to teach soldiers and children the same beat. They could use grief to power radios and make light into a net. Rasu watched all of this and did not find the answer the council sought. He found a choice he did not want to make: stay with orders and end lives, or turn and tell a truth that might cost him rank but save a people he had learned to see. The episode ended on a quiet scene. Rasu sat on the edge of a ruined wall and watched Mara's students lift a small patched drone into the gray sky. The drone trembled, then flew steady as a story. It carried a piece of paper tied with a child's ribbon. On the paper was a sun with many hands. Rasu folded the paper into his palm and felt its edges bite. He pressed the paper to his chest. He had a choice. Behind him the patrol's engines hummed a song of orders. Ahead, a child waved at the drone and laughed. The laugh was simple and wild. It made the patrol's engines sound hollow. Rasu's hand opened. He did not speak. He did not move yet. But the small paper in his palm was a start, and that was enough to change the night. Maps filled the war room. Pins of red and blue crowded the glass table. The aliens were precise. They liked neat plans. They liked long lines and clear orders. Humans did not fit neat lines. They made patterns that moved like rivers. Kerno watched a live feed of Earth. The feed showed many small ships slipping between islands of rubble. They were not uniform. Some were made from fishing boats with extra engines. Some were small freighters with patched hulls. They moved like a swarm, but not a single mind led them. They moved because need led them. On the ground, Mara walked through a city that had become a web of help. A farmer from one side of the river sent grain with a message, "Who needs this, take it." A mechanic from the other side sent a radio with a note, "Learn how to use it." Old rivals met at a ruined bridge and traded parts rather than threats. The city did not obey a flag or a single leader. It obeyed a simple rule: help where help was needed. The aliens watched a montage one night. The montage showed hands passing tools like a relay. It showed engineers teaching children. It showed medics leaving clinics open to any who came. A voice on Earth said, quietly, "We stitch what keeps us. We give what keeps others." The montage did not show grand strategy. It showed many small moves that added up. The council called an emergency debate. An admiral leaned on the table and pushed pins with his finger. "This is not war as we know it," he said. "They are not a single army. They are many small systems that join when needed. How do we fight that?" Some argued for a full invasion. They said humans must be crushed before they spread. Others said that would be costly. A historian said, "When we force growth by pressure, we make faster change. We have records. Small sparks become flames." While the council argued, human networks did something strange. A farming fleet rerouted supplies to a coastal town under siege. A band of engineers shared a blueprint for a cheap shield measured in wood and resin, and dozens of small workshops built them. Old enemies in different nations sent messengers to coordinate safe paths for refugees. There was no single command, but there was a map of need. Need moved like a tide. On a night when the stars were cold, a group of patched vessels swarmed a relay station that sent coordination signals across a whole sector. They did not aim to destroy the relay at first. They wanted confusion. Tiny drones, homemade and noisy, flew to the relay and mimicked many small signals. The relay began to choke on noise. It tried to sort truth from false. Its processors slowed. A key link went dark for a few long minutes. The alien fleet felt the loss like a cut in a nerve. Ships that needed orders did not get them. Supplies missed their path. A simple relay failure gave human commanders time to move supplies and people. The admiral watched the replay and felt the old certainty slip. Back on Earth, a woman who had once been a market trader smiled as she watched engineers use a relay map to plan safe routes. She had no taste for glory. She only wanted the children in her street to sleep warm. But her small act, a donated antenna and a clever patch, had ripple effects. The tape she used to hold wires was now part of a larger plan. Inside the fleet, a faction grew uneasy. Some members whispered of total war. Others said the council should try outreach. They must either break humans or bind them gently. The word bind made many in the room uneasy. It sounded like control disguised as kindness. An alien faction offered an idea: share knowledge that would help humans rebuild, but under conditions. The hope was that gratitude would buy influence. Another voice warned that any gift could be a lesson. The lessons would change humans. They might learn fast and use those gifts in ways the givers never planned. Meanwhile, human engineers worked on something the aliens did not expect. They reversed a small alien weapon captured in a skirmish. The weapon was crude in their hands at first. They did not understand its core. They only saw its parts and guessed. They borrowed tools from different trades: clockwork, fishing gear, a child's toy motor. They mixed a scientist's logic with a farmer's patience. The result was not a mighty beam or a fleet-destroying device. It was clever. The engineers used the weapon's core to make a shield generator that folded light and sound in odd ways. It made small ships hard to target by the relay sensors. The alien designers had built the core to make things precise. Humans built it to be messy, to distract, and to hide. When the shield went live, a patrol that had chased a convoy into a canyon lost its lock. Their beams scattered into 1,000 wrong places. The convoy vanished. The patrol screamed over the channel, "We are losing feed. They are folding the space." That word folding was not usual. The admiral tapped his console and read the report again. "Improvised use of alien tech," it said. "Adaptive systems multiply." Rousseau, the field agent who had once held a child's drawing, spoke in a council meeting. He had seen how humans used gifts and turned them into tools for many things. He argued they should not use force first. He argued they should think of alliances. His voice shook because the decision was heavy. Some in the council called him naive. Others listened and did not scoff. As the tide turned, small alien factions began to break ranks. Some favored negotiation. Others favored a surgical strike to remove the human centers of cohesion. The admiral wanted a plan to cut coordination. He proposed a strike on the largest human assembly hub. The council debated and then voted to delay. The delay was small, but delays shape outcomes. On Earth, the patched shields held as convoys moved. The human networks grew bolder. They began to use alien signaling patterns to confuse patrols. They built small relay jammers from old toys and kitchen radios. A child on a dusty road learned to set a beat that mimicked a command and then used it to stop a drone for long enough to let people pass. The episode closed on the image of a young admiral staring at a map where small pins had moved like tides. He pressed his hand to a panel and whispered, "Containment fails." The room around him listened and did not react then, but they had heard. On a battered hill, Mara watched a convoy vanish under a patchwork shield and smiled with no triumph. She only thought of the children who slept that night warm. The tide had not turned all at once. It had shifted in small steps that added up. The council would choose next. The choice would not be simple. The world that had once seemed small had become a shape no map had warned them about. Years of small fights and strange meetings had made lines on maps look messy. The council met more often now. The dome felt different. It no longer held only plans. It held doubts. The scout captain Kerno sat with his hands folded. He watched feeds that showed what his ship had seen: hands passing tools, children learning beats, patched ships slipping like fish through a net. He had once thought a single strike would decide everything. Now he was not so sure. Rousseau walked the halls in silence. He carried the folded paper with the child's son and many hands. He had kept it since he first saw it in Mara's town. The paper had become small and soft from being held. Sometimes he opened it and let the lines move under his thumb. He did not know why the drawing made him calm. He only knew it had changed how he looked at reports. The council called a final hearing. Generals spoke first. Their faces were set. "They learn fast," one said. "If we wait, they will build more than we can stop." He spoke of fleets and models and loss. He used numbers to explain fear. Historians came next. We have always feared what grows fast, a historian said. But we have also been wrong when we tried to force shape on life. The cost is not only bodies. It is change that we cannot control. Rousseau stepped forward with his plain notes. He told one story. I watched a child teach a drone to dance, he said. The drone carried a note tied with a ribbon. The note had the sun with many hands. The child laughed when the drone rose. The laugh made the patrol engine sound small. The room was quiet. The drawing made more than one hard face soften. The admiral looked at Rousseau and saw not a traitor, but a man who had seen more than numbers could show. The admiral rubbed his temple and said nothing for a long time. Outside, humans kept doing what humans do. They baked bread, they fixed wires, they learned. They used what they took and what they were given. Some accepted alien gifts and turned them into help. Some refused and still found a way. The patchwork world stitched itself together in ways that no single plan could predict. The council made a decision that did not please everyone. They would not crush Earth. They would not leave Earth alone. They chose a third path: watch, and shape with caution. A handful of delegates would travel to offer help wrapped in rules. Another group would keep quiet patrols to make sure no one broke the fragile peace. Some members cheered. Others left the room and did not speak. The choice felt like walking a narrow bridge. It might hold. It might break. Mara heard about the decision on an old radio. She sat with children in a school that had no roof and smiled. She did not know the words containment or outreach the way the council used them. She only knew she had more tools now. She would teach kids not only to fix things but to choose what they would become. Not every alien agreed with the council. A faction thought that any help would teach humans to take more. They plotted against the plan. Another group saw possibility, a new tie between strangers that could change more than one world. Old fears met new hopes and neither side could claim the future alone. A small delegation went to Earth. They did not come in parade. They came in thin ships that landed like shadowed birds. The first alien envoy stepped down into a square filled with people who watched with curiosity and fear. The envoy held a small box. Inside were tools and seeds and a paper that said, in clear words, "We offer aid. We offer caution." Mara met them with a steady face. She touched the envoy's hand without ceremony. The envoy had known war and iron. He had not known bread shared on a ruined street. That sight made his armor feel like a costume. Over months, some gifts helped and some harmed. A machine given to repair water pumps worked well until someone used it for a purpose the givers did not expect. Rules bent. New rules were made. People learned fast. The council watched and rewrote the rules and watched again. One evening a quiet thing happened that no file could capture. A child handed a borrowed battery to a stranger with a slow smile. The stranger took it and said thank you. The child shrugged and ran back to play. The act was small. It should not have mattered in a dome where stars and fleets decide. But the child's small act changed a man who watched from a balcony. The man had been an officer who helped write the laws sent to Earth. He had seen maps and figures and decisions that used lives like chess pieces. The small act made his hands tremble. He went home and could not sleep. That night he opened a file and wrote a single line under the heading of policy: respect the choice of the people. He did not expect a revolution from a line. He only expected to sleep. On Earth, engineers learned to fold alien code into songs again. A radio network of villages hummed with messages that mixed languages and beeps. They used the network to warn of storms, to ask for sugar, to call a doctor. It taught them speed. It taught them care. It taught them that tools can be used to hold life as well as to break it. Years folded into a thin story. Some battles happened and some were stopped. Some gifts were taken and changed. The galaxy learned a truth that did not show on any chart. It is not only weapons that make a species feared. It is not only fleets. It is the way a people use what they have and what they learn. At the final session, the elder who had watched empires burn spoke last. He had bones like old wood and eyes that had seen bright and dark. He held the child's drawing on his lap. "We fear what we cannot predict," he said. "We fear losing the right to decide for others. But there is another fear we did not learn to hold, the fear of regret." He looked at the council and at the envoy and at the files that named Earth a problem. "We can break them," he said. "We can shape them into what we wish. Or we can stand with them, and let them choose." Outside, a small human-built ship left a port. Flags stitched from many hands fluttered on its mast. People watched and cheered in small voices. The ship carried food and tools and the name of a place that had not existed on many maps. As it rose, a voice on its transponder said, clear and small, "We will be what we choose." The dome went quiet. The council folded its papers. The galaxy had learned a new measure of fear and a new measure of hope. No one knew which would be larger in the years to come. The sun with hands drawing rested in a pocket of a man who had once ordered strikes. He touched it and did not say the name of his plan. He only watched the stars and felt a small hope that choice might be the truest power.